Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam.
Bitcoin itself is a hyped up fraud.
Bitcoin hitting an all-time high as the first ever US-based Bitcoin ETF had its debut on the New York Stock Exchange.
At least they know enough not to trust fiat money that's controlled by our government. But they're trying to reinvent the wheel, and they've come up with a flat tire. We already have a perfect, real form of money, and it's called gold.
We have something called the Bitcoin. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin, a Ponzi scheme, a tool for criminals, a bubble doomed to burst. At least that's how the world's most powerful leaders described it. Trump tweeted it was based on thin air. Jamie Dimon slammed it as a fraud worse than tulip bulbs. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, said it was a tool for money laundering. But something has changed. Today, the same Ponzi is being embraced by Wall Street, approved by SEC, adopted by global asset managers, and potentially even being added to America's strategic financial arsenal. The US government, once Bitcoin's loudest critic, is slowly turning into its biggest ally. Why? What changed? Was it public pressure, global competition, monetary panic, or something far deeper? This is not just a story about crypto. This is about global trust, economic power, and the future of money.
Bitcoins. You never heard of them a few weeks ago? Now everybody's talking about them, but is it a currency?
I don't know. Or is it more like a stock? Or is it a tulip bulb?
Or is
We're
it
going to
just
debate that.
stupid?
I'll tell you what, I don't know what to do exactly with Bitcoin, and they don't look a bit like these coins. Matter of fact, they're kind of in the Ethernet. What are they?
Rewind to the 2010s. Bitcoin was nothing more than a fringe experiment built by pseudonymous creator Satoshi Nakamoto. It promised a currency outside the control of governments and central banks. But traditional finance didn't just ignore it, they attacked it. Jamie Dimon called it stupid and threatened to fire any JP Morgan trader who touched it. Trump said it should be shut down. Larry Fink claimed it was fueling crime and would never go mainstream. These weren't ordinary critics. These were the very people who shaped monetary policy, banking strategy, and investment logic around the US dollar. But outside Wall Street, something else was unfolding. In Silicon Valley basements, open source communities, and early Reddit forums, people kept building. They weren't looking for approval, they were designing an alternative, something open, transparent, and censorship resistant. As financial crisis played out in Cyprus, Venezuela, and Argentina, Bitcoin found real world use. People needed an escape hatch, and Bitcoin offered one. And while the media called it a scam, Bitcoin kept growing from 1 cent to $1, from $1 to $10, and from $10 to $1,000. The more the system mocked it, the more it thrived. Therefore, even as institutions dismissed it, their analysts watched it. Hedge funds ran simulations, banks quietly explored custody solutions, and the old guard, step by step, began to prepare for the very future they laughed at. Then came the crackdown. In 2022 and 2023, while crypto adoption exploded, US regulators began a quiet war. They didn't ban crypto outrightly, cause that would have triggered an outrage. Instead, they squeezed its oxygen supply, banking access. This was dubbed as Operation Choke Point 2.0 by industry insiders. Silvergate, one of the few crypto-friendly banks, was investigated. Signature Bank too. Coinbase got hit with a Wells notice, while Binance was targeted with a multi-agency lawsuit. Circle, which issued USDC, was denied Fed's master account access. No new laws, no congressional hearing, just stealth enforcement. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Exchanges lost banking partners, startups couldn't access capital, and users struggled with on-ramps. As a result, the industry migrated. Founders relocated to friendlier jurisdictions like Dubai, Singapore, and Switzerland, taking innovation, capital, and resources with them. And once again, the US misread the movement because The more it pushed crypto out, the more global it became. The genie wasn't going back inside the bottle. To understand why this matters, we have to ask the most basic question. What is money? Most people think money is backed by the government or maybe gold, but in truth, it's backed by one thing: trust. In 2008, that trust broke. Banks gambled with derivatives. The system crashed, and Federal Reserve responded by printing trillions to prop up the Wall Street.
We are in the midst of a serious financial crisis, and the federal government is responding with decisive action. These are not normal circumstances. The government's top economic experts warn that without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into a financial panic.
Fast forward to 2020, COVID-19 arrives, lockdowns begin. The government issues stimulus checks, small business bailouts, and Fed bond buybacks. The US printed 4 trillion in just 12 months. This 4 trillion was over 40% of all US dollars in existence, and this triggered inflation. Supply chain shocks made it even worse. Suddenly, everyday Americans were paying 30% more for their groceries, rent, and healthcare. And they began asking the question, if money can be printed endlessly, why should we trust it? This wasn't just a financial issue, it became a philosophical one. And Bitcoin, a currency with fixed supply, began to look like a serious consideration. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater, didn't come from crypto, but his research became one of Bitcoin's strongest macro arguments. He studied 500 years of empire, the Dutch, the British, and now the American. Every single one followed the same pattern: a rise driven by innovation and trade, an accumulation of wealth and military power, an explosion of debt, a devaluation of currency, and finally collapse of the global trust. According to Dalio, US is already deep in stage 5. The dollar is still dominant, but no longer sacred. Debt is above 34 trillion. The Fed is cornered. Raise rates and the economy stalls. Lower them and inflation returns. A lose-lose spiral. And the next great challenger? China. A rising economy. A growing military power. But the currency, yuan, that's tightly controlled and deeply distrusted. Therefore, the world is caught in a dilemma. If neither the dollar nor the yuan can capture global trust, what can? Bitcoin enters this vacuum. Bitcoin wasn't built to be fast or cheap. It was built to be neutral. No CEO, no board, no shutdown button. And during one of the most geopolitically tense moments in modern history, it proved its worth. In early 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. The West responded with sweeping sanctions. Russian banks were removed from SWIFT. The ruble collapsed. Traditional finance was weaponized that day. But Bitcoin kept flowing. The Ukrainian government posted donation addresses on Twitter, and within days they raised millions in crypto. No middleman, no censorship. Meanwhile, Russians used Bitcoin to bypass capital controls, not to evade justice, but to survive. And therefore, Bitcoin became the trust layer in a world where trust was fading. Not just digital gold, not just a store of value, but a tool for humanitarian coordination. Now, in a surprising twist, the US is embracing the very thing it fought. President Trump publicly endorsed Bitcoin, not just as an asset, but as a reserve.
This will serve in effect as the core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile.
The seized Silk Road BTC, almost 200,000 coins, are being reclassified as strategic reserves. Senator Cynthia Lummis introduced the Bitcoin Legal Tender Act. Alongside it came the Genesis Act, a proposal to purchase almost 1 million BTC over the next decade. Much like gold during the Bretton Woods era, and Wall Street followed. Larry Fink launched a Bitcoin ETF through BlackRock. Fidelity, VanEck, and Franklin Templeton joined in. Over $60 billion of net inflows came pouring in, retail and institutions alike. The SEC approved staking-based ETFs. The US Treasury began consulting on stablecoin regulations. The push for stablecoin legislation is not just about consumer protection, it's about dollar dominance. By regulating US dollar-backed stablecoins, the US can export the dollar into every smartphone, every crypto wallet, every DeFi app, anywhere in the world. It's a subtle but powerful way to extend dollar's influence far and beyond the borders without printing a single bill. Therefore, the US strategy is clear. Embrace crypto, regulate it, and use it to outcompete China in the global digital economy. Bitcoin, my friends, was born in rebellion, raised in ridicule, forged in crisis, and now it's entering the halls of power. The same asset, mocked by presidents and bankers, is now being considered a pillar for national economic resilience. America doesn't fully trust China. China doesn't trust open financial systems. And the people, they no longer trust paper promises. In this triangle of mistrust, Bitcoin becomes the fourth variable. The US knows it must devalue its currency to re-industrialize. But unlike 1971, it won't do it without a fallback. Bitcoin is that fallback. From Ponzi to policy, from protest asset to reserve asset, the narrative has flipped, and those who once loved now invest. It's not the end of the Bitcoin story, but it's just the end of the beginning. If this episode helped you connect the dots on Bitcoin, money, and geopolitics, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with that one friend who still thinks Bitcoin is a bubble. The future is being written in blocks, one chain at a time. I'll see you in the next deep dive.